Hello everyone. Today I'll be doing a video on the Soviet rations and everything, and we'll be breaking this down into stages like we usually do. And yeah, first stage we'll be talking about is the canned foods right here in the ration bag, and then we'll be talking about stuff that would have been served in field kitchens. And then we'll be talking about stuff that would have been specially served. So yeah, let's get this started. So over here we got our ration bag. Just a simple bag like that with a rope on top that you can pull or close. And no, usually the Russians weren't all about rations. It's more like they had a chef all the time, 24/7 cooking food. And the closest thing you could have to rations were these canned foods. So let's start off. So we got our condensed milk. They didn't really have any rations. They were just, they didn't really have any labels. They were just blank. And yeah, then we'll have corned beef. That is another thing that they definitely had, but wasn't a thing that you'd cook all the time. And yeah, then we got canned sausages. Now, normally you'd get your food from the field kitchens and the chefs working there, and they had special people there to cook you food and all that, so it was safe. And having canned foods was more of a emergency thing, so you didn't really have to carry around this giant thing of cans or rations. You could just go up to the field chef or field kitchen and ask the chef to cook you something. Rather it be goulash or canned meat. Most of the time they would have got something from the farms that were shipped over there, like carrots, pork, meat, and everything there. And it was pretty efficient, and they never had any food shortages, so that was a good plus. And yeah, I won't be eating these exactly. I do have one of these canned foods in this thing, but the bread is completely covering everything, so yeah. But normally in these rations and all that, you'd get served canned meats if it was canned foods. If you're lucky, you might have fresh milk, but we don't have that luxury in this war we're doing. So let's move on to our actual food I will be eating today. So first off, we'll start off with this piece of bread. This probably would have been provided by the field kitchen chef there. They had a full bakery and everything set up, and they could cook almost whatever they want. So that's to start off your meal. So then we got carrots on the right, sausages in the middle, and we got some sunflower seeds for a snack. And the carrots give you all the vegetables and nutrients you need. The meat gives you all the protein and all that, and the sunflower seeds give you all the salt. Now that's enough for breakfast or lunch. Usually they would have arranged things like, maybe for breakfast you'd have a omelet or cooked bread, but you don't really need too much for breakfast. It's mostly lunch and dinner where they start cooking up better foods. So this is more like a lunch type ration. For dinner they probably would have cooked pea soup, goulash, stews and all that. And maybe if you're lucky, maybe a steak. But yeah, there's not too much on this, but it's a simple ration. that would have been cooked up by your chef at the field kitchen. And if you also don't know what a field kitchen is, it's a basically a wagon with a giant kind of stove on the back. That what you do is that you grab firewood, you toss it in the stove, it cooks up a lot of heat, and you can either use the stove on there with the fire, or you could use the giant boiling pot. And the boiling pot, you pour water in there, and you make a whole bunch of stews for your whole entire party, or your division. And then you have all the stew and food for your whole entire army. Then it was efficient and pretty decent and fresh food, by the way. So yeah, would have been a simple thing. You can do almost whatever you want with these foods. You know, you could maybe mix them together, or stuff like that. Maybe add salt or sugar, whatever. But yeah, now it's time to move on to our drinks. So today I have tea, if y'all can see. Just simple tea. This was easily providable and was rationed out and encouraged by soldiers to drink and all that. It was a pretty simple thing. It boosted morale. But yeah, what the soldiers would do is that if they were lucky, they would place fresh milk in there. But most of them just had dark tea. They didn't really mix it up with much. They just drank it as is. But all I added to my tea was some sugar, and that was it. The problem is with these condensed milk stuff, it's a giant thing of canned food. So you better be sharing this with your soldiers or comrades next to you, because it's quite a bit. And I actually had trouble eating this whole entire thing when I first tried condensed milk and all that, because you only need a little bit of milk for your tea, and that's it. And the rest just kind of goes to waste. And all condensed milk is, it's just a sugary syrup, and that's it. But yeah. And you all can basically imagine a soldier out here in the fields trying to, get lunch and everything after fighting, and they're basically exhausted at that point. And all they really need is just some rations and, drink of water, and that's about it. Boxed rations were rare because those were only used for emergencies and all that. Especially if you had field chefs right there and fresh food coming in, you don't really need any canned foods, so canned foods weren't really a thing there, but they had enough where they had to issue out ration bags. But yeah, let's get into this. So first up, we'll be trying out the carrots. You can either have dried out carrots or fresh carrots. I highly suggest that you get just normal carrots, not baby carrots, because in the fields, it takes more work to cut off carrots and make them smaller. If you could just pull them out, wash them, and then just throw them in the back of the truck and send them off to the field or field kitchen. So yeah, just use normal carrots. What I end up doing is chopping up the carrots into pieces. If you want, you could just leave the carrot as is, and then you could just have it as is. But yeah, you can easily imagine soldiers just going up in a giant line, going up to the field kitchen, and just asking the chef for food. And yeah, pretty nice. And the Navy had a similar ration to this. They had probably harbors at base giving them rations and stuff. I mean, the Navy was completely out of the war during this time. And what the Navy ended up doing is having some of the sailors go over to the infantry and actually fighting with bare guns and all that. So sometimes in reenactments or pictures, you'd actually see sailors in their full uniform carrying machine guns and going out to the front line. This didn't happen for too long because you had enough infantry, and plus this was a temporary thing, so it wasn't like a full-on thing where the Navy joined the Army. It was more like a thing that the Navy could get out and do, because during Stalingrad and all that, they were already losing a whole bunch of things. They already lost half of Poland, Ukraine, uh, you know, all these countries out there, which was part of the Union. And so they kind of thought that the sailors could do a little bit of stuff. But yeah. Then you got your simple sausage right here. You could easily go to a store, buy Vienna sausages, whatever. Or if you want, you could replace this with corned beef. The problem is with corned beef, it is takes a little bit more effort to cook versus this. You just open it up, pour the water out, and depending on you, you could just boil it or eat it as is. Maybe even toss in your pan and cook it. Personally, I do not like the water in there, so I just eat it cooked. So yeah. And many of these rations, right, were just to keep you alive. And so all the soldiers, right, were depending on one chef to, make their food. Because if the chef failed to make food, that's like your whole entire army without a food for a day. And so you need to keep your soldiers fed every day because they're out there running, losing calories, losing energy, and the meal replenishes that. And so it's really important to have all your right things, or else your soldiers will, have different kinds of problems, like, not enough vitamins, not enough protein, and they start depriving and wasting away. And it would really suck for the battlefield, because that means they could lose a whole entire city because the chef didn't cook proper food or didn't cook anything. And so it's really important to have proper food on the battlefield and hydrated soldiers. But yeah, they definitely would have had different drinks and stuff on the battlefield, like my last video with the sodas and all that. They would have had special things and drinks like that could have easily substituted for dessert. Unfortunately, the Russians didn't really have dessert. They had mostly, just dinner, lunch, and breakfast, and that's it. And yeah, most of this stuff you could easily get at a store or a grocery market, whatever. As long as you're selling foods, that's kind of where you could get that stuff. And that's about it with rations and all that. It's just cheap stuff. You don't have to buy rations. You could just make your own rations if you think about it. You don't have to pay $40 because of a stupid ration or anything. You don't have to buy reproduction rations. You just go to your store. You, depending on what category you're in, like if you're German, American factions, or Japanese, maybe they might have labels, but today this is Russian rations or Soviet rations, so yeah. They didn't really have anything that had fancy labels. The closest thing that I could find was the chocolate bars and the crackers had labels, and that's about it. Not too fancy. It was a big thing to have your soldiers have these things, so wasting time making labels and stuff kind of just you know stall out the war, which is why you got to keep things up to date. And rations were not complicated. As you can see, it's just a simple thing, and they just kept you alive. And you just eat them and enjoy it. And you had no time limits on when you have to eat rations. You could, probably sit here for 2 or 3 hours and eat them. Most of the time in World War II, the soldiers had, a whole bunch of peacetime. So it was a simple thing to do. Most of the time the soldiers were bored because you had nothing to do. And most people think that, the soldiers just ran out there with guns 24/7, shooting Germans, and, did some weird John Wick backflips or something, but in reality, it's more like, maybe for 15 minutes, at the most 5 hours, pushing the Germans away. And that's all it was, you grab your gun, you clear out the village. If you're stuck in a stronghold or a tie, you'll have to dig yourself a trench and sit out there and, kind of just patrol around there. And, that's when these canned foods come into play, where you're stuck in a trench, right? You're waiting for the Germans to come, but you're already like 16 hours in, you had no food. And so these canned foods come in handy because you're away from base. And you're, ordered to stay here until you clear out the Germans going along there. And, yeah, most of the time, these, Germans and stuff never really, did too much to the Russians, but, most of the time, if something got too out of hand and everything, they could have retreated, but most people think, the Russians were charging at the Germans and manpower stuff, but it's not like that. The Russians were pretty smart with their tactics, actually. So, it's more like the opposite, with the Germans charging at the Russians. And, charges with Russian soldiers were not really a thing. And Russians never really did shot at each other. There's only been 2 reported cases of, the Russians shooting at one of their allies because they were retreating. And most of the time it's only in the, the heel, the shoulder. And what they ended up doing is, sending them back into the battlefield. And, if you join a war, fight it out. Don't retreat or anything. Because, keep in mind, these are enlisted men. They said they wanted to go. They, specifically went up to the office and wrote their name on the paper and were ready to join war. So if they joined, they joined. And if they kept, retreating and running out of the battlefield, they'll get executed by their officer for disobeying war orders. But that was usually at base, where they prepped everything and, they weren't savage and just pulled out a machine gun and started shooting people who retreated. they probably would have regrouped and waited for the next platoon to roll up and hold the trench instead of letting the Germans charge in and then take it over. But yeah, I'll get into more about the tactics and all that in the next video. I don't really have too much on, Soviet tactics and all that. Let me guys know if I should do tactic videos with Russians and stuff. The Russians obviously knew this get low, like, no matter where they were going, they're always, like, low on the ground. And either are taking cover or digging trenches. Most people think that they just ran up and shot people and did a war cry and that's it, but in reality it's more like, they were hiding behind buildings, digging in trenches and all that. But yeah. Let me guys know if I should make more videos about stuff like this, because I can definitely provide that with the weather clearing up now. Beforehand, it was just raining every day. Earlier today, it was raining, so luckily everything dried up, so I was able to do this. And yeah, I think I'm gonna end the video here, finish up my ration, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.